What's going on, guys? Welcome back to After the Credits, the review show that no one asked for. Today we are talking about Blitz the League 2, and this is a game that was my holy grail game when I started my PS3 collection, and I finally got my hands on it. And of course, when I got my hands on it, I had to pop it in and play the whole thing as quickly as possible because I had this game as a kid, I absolutely loved it, and I wanted to play it as an adult, and I still have an affinity to this game. So had a lot of fun, but this video is going to be all about that. So without further ado, let's just roll the intro and get into the video itself. Now, Blitz the League follows the same formula that the previous Blitz games from the past followed. It's essentially an over-the-top, very violent football game with a lot of massive big hits and a lot of crazy plays scattered all about just to make the game a lot of fun and very, very wild, to say the least. But the very interesting thing about the League series, there's Blitz the League and obviously Blitz the League 2 that we're talking about today. But in these games, there's actually a little bit of a story mode, and throughout the story, you play as a character known as Franchise. You do get to name Franchise, but you do not get to change his appearance at all. He looks how he looks. But essentially, you give him a name, and then he is drafted #1 overall by the LA Riot. However, Franchise says he can play in the league, but he cannot play for the LA Riot. He needs to play for the hometown team. And the commissioner begrudgingly agrees to allow this to happen. And this gives you the opportunity to go ahead and create a team that you want your player to play on. And this is very cool. It's very cool by the developers, because you were unable to really customize your character. At least you can create an entire team that he can play on. So very, very cool there. And anytime customization is available, it's always a positive in my opinion. Now, how the game is structured is you'll play one or two games in the division that you're currently in. Again, there's 3 divisions, probably about 8 games in each division. And every 2 or 3 games or so, you'll get a cutscene that'll progress the story forward. The story in this game is extremely corny, I would say. And to be quite honest, the voice actor for Franchise does a terrible job, in my opinion. Maybe it's just the limitations of the time or something along those lines, but to be honest, I just couldn't stand the voice actor for the main character in the game, which is kind of a big bummer, but everybody else does a pretty good job. I think the commissioner's voice well. Lawrence Taylor does a great job as Quentin Sands and all of that, but would have liked to have someone better for Franchise, but we'll move on from that. But that'll progress the story, and kind of that's what you're going to be doing throughout the entire time. But in between each games, there's going to be pop-ups for challenges that you need to do, whether it be a call from your agent or a call from a girl or whoever it may be. There's going to be an additional challenge for you to complete. Some games don't have challenges, but most games will have an additional side objective for you to do. And these challenges are generally very beneficial for you, as they will give you new sponsors. They'll sponsor equipment to make you a better player overall. And in the girlfriend scenario, those girlfriends actually apply passives to your entire team. So, for example, one of the girlfriends will automatically update your team's facilities, which will give you an overall boost for every player on your team, not just your created Franchise player. Now, as you're playing the games, obviously, when you complete a game, you're going to get to an end screen that'll give you the amount of money that you made during that game. Money is acquired by doing dirty hits and a bunch of things that are related to the game itself, and including betting on the game. You can actually bet on spreads, and if you keep it within the spread, you can get a little bit extra money there. Talk about more of this stuff in the gameplay section, but you do acquire money from game to game, and you can use that money to upgrade your facilities, as I mentioned before. That's why that girlfriend's very nice. She upgrades facilities for no cost, and the higher end facilities are about 800,000. So that's about 2 or 3 games worth of savings most of the time in order to get those. So it's a good girlfriend to bag if you can get her. But you get that money, upgrade facilities, and you can also juice your players essentially, or give them steroids. Now, there are 4 legal drugs, there are 4 illegal drugs, and there's usually a juice of the week. Juice of the week is usually a higher risk drug than even the illegal drugs, but all of these just give you boosts, passive boosts for the next game and that you're going into. So, to be honest, I didn't spend a lot of time juicing my players. The only one that I really used was a pill that I would give to my Franchise player that would reduce the risk of getting injured in the game. So in case I really was worried about a player on the opposing team, I would use that. But most of the time, I wouldn't spend money on that. I just spent money on facility upgrades. But those are all things that you can do in between each individual match that you play. Now, one of the really cool things about this game that I want to mention as well is the overall presentation kind of in between games. Now, the cutscenes are cringy and not very great to watch, but the team intros are some of the best, most enjoyable parts of this game. When you select a team and you go in to play that game, you're going to get a highlight reel of their star player, talking about what he's good at, and then also kind of taking shots at him and just making him look like an overall badass. It makes it a lot of fun to go into those matches against those other star players and just try to absolutely outperform them and beat the shit out of them out there on the field. So that's a great presentation touch. And one of my favorite parts of the game are just those team intros, because they're a lot of fun to sit through. Now, with all that being said, let's dive into the gameplay here. So I'm just going to come out and say right off the bat that this is a janky video game. You can probably tell by the gameplay you're seeing behind me that it's pretty janky, you know. There's not really smooth animations. It's a lot of like jump cutting. It's especially noticeable if you try to blitz. Like my character was a linebacker, and if I would try to blitz the quarterback, I would kind of get suctioned into a block instead of a smooth transition. But again, we're talking about a game from 2008. There were some technical limitations at that time, but it certainly doesn't look as clean and crisp as a game like Madden would, or a game like All Pro 2K8 would look. You know, it's got some rough edges, but that's kind of comes with the territory, I suppose, with this game. But throughout the game itself, you're gonna basically play like a regular football game. It's designed very similar to what you would expect. You drop back and to pass. You have icons above players' heads to throw the ball to, and pretty standard, straightforward stuff. But where this game gets interesting is with the unleash meter at the top of the screen. So if you look at the top of the screen, you can probably see two meters, one for my team, one for the enemy team. And then below that, there are little circles. Now the circles are pit points or performance points, or I don't exactly know what the long version of that is, but the entire game is based around acquiring those pit points, because if you fill up all of those bubbles, you get a full unleashed bar, which is going to provide you with a much more powerful, whether it be a offensive or defensive move. So you want to try to get as many full unleashed power-ups as you possibly can in order to do the most damage to the team. And you can acquire these pit points by stiff arming at the proper time, by using an evade move at the proper time, performing a dirty hit on defense. And to do that, you hold LT and X, or tackle, on defense to perform one of those dirty moves. But all of these things add up and start filling that performance meter. And then once you get it full, you get an unleashed move, which will lead to a more devastating offensive attack, whether it be a more precise pass, or what typically happens if you use unleashed on offense when you're throwing the ball and you throw it out and you're actually able to manually catch it with your player, they get a large amount of separation. So it's almost a guaranteed touchdown every time that you use it properly on offense. You can also use it to do, like I said, stiff arms, and these stiff arms have a higher potential of potentially, great English there, but they have a higher chance of injuring the defensive player when you use a stiff arm with full unleashed bar. And then on the reverse of that, the defensive side, you're going to get stronger hits with a higher chance of injury. You're going to get a higher chance of fumbles using unleashed hits, and things like that. So that's pretty much what you're working towards throughout the game. Now, this does create some pretty interesting moments in these games, obviously, because if the enemy team has a full unleashed meter and you have like no meter and no pips and no hope of getting an unleashed meter anytime soon, you have to kind of decide what player on your team can take a big hit. And it's pretty interesting, to say the least, because you hardly ever want your main franchise player to take an unleashed hit and risk injury. So you throw it off to one of your other people with a little bit higher stamina. Now, that brings up another aspect I should talk about, which is the stamina system. So the more and more that you hit players with dirty hits, the lower their stamina bar will go. And obviously, if they go into the red, they're at really high risk of a major injury occurring. And if they're in the white or yellow, you may just get like a minor injury. So you got to watch those stamina bars and try to use the most healthy players to take those big ass hits and hope to God they don't fumble or get hurt. Now, with all that being said, the gameplay is a ton of fun. However, the game is very easy, unfortunately. You know, if you're not going for the challenges, which unfortunately this has got a platinum trophy that is unachievable due to the requirement of online trophies, which is always a bummer. But you're not going for trophies and you're not doing all the challenges that are available to you, you're going to breeze through the game pretty easily. The only time you're ever going to really reset a match is if you have a challenge to injure a certain player, for example, because sometimes the stars just don't align and you can't land a big hit on that guy, so you got to restart. But that's about it. The game through the campaign is very, very easy. That being said, though, this would be a great couch co-op game to play with somebody else on the couch next to you. That would really increase the difficulty and obviously make for a much more enjoyable experience. But since it's just me making these videos and I don't have anybody to play with, we got to talk about what we had access to, which was the campaign mode. Now, the one thing we haven't touched on, which is the most notorious part about this game, is the injury system. So it's very gruesome, very gratuitous, goes into kind of like an X-ray mode where you see bones break and shit fly all over the place and a lot of blood. And this stuff is really, really fun and exciting. Basically how this works is it's always going to usually require a dirty hit at the very least, either a dirty hit or an unleashed hit. And when you go up to make a tackle, it's going to go into slow motion and allow you to select a part of the body that you want to target for the dirty hit. Usually gives you like a hip, a lower leg, or a stomach, or a head, depending on where your player is aligned with the offensive player. And then when you select the point that you want to attack, you just mash X to try to get the bar as full as possible to do as much damage as possible. And that will lead you into those kind of X-ray injury scenarios that you've probably seen behind me quite a few times now. These are very cool to see. There's some very rare ones that are hard to get, typically requiring a very low stamina player getting a big shot. But I will say you do see the same injuries a lot. So even though they're cool the first couple times, it kind of starts to wear on you once you see a broken rib for the 555th time. Still cool nonetheless, but that charm does kind of wear on you a little bit because you're going to see the same minor injuries all the time. Now, again, to quickly mention the jank, I just want to mention it here, kind of since we're talking about some of the negatives as well. It does look janky, and it feels janky at times, but I don't necessarily think that it affects gameplay in a horrendously bad way. It's just, you have to know what you're getting into with this game. You have to know going in that you're getting an arcade football game that's got some quirks to it. It's not going to run smooth as butter like Madden or something like that. So as long as you know that going into it, I don't think that's going to be a massive deterrent. But again, it is a jarring game to look at when I watch footage back of it, just because of how the movement is and things like that. And then the last thing that I'll quickly mention before we kind of put a pretty bow on top of this review is the fact that when you do play through the campaign mode with franchise, you end up using franchise all the time, meaning on offense and defense. You're going to be using your main player on defense, and then on offense, he's going to get the ball 95% of the time, unless he's at risk of taking a massive injury, and then you might have to go somewhere else. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't allow you to develop a really great relationship with some of the other players on your team because you're going to be prioritizing your franchise player, essentially. Now, you do acquire players to your roster from other teams, such as Quentin Sands or Carl Herpitz, and some other people that you kind of run into throughout the campaign. So it's cool to see those guys make plays every now and again. But it would have been nice to kind of build that camaraderie with some of the other teammates that are on the team, because you do play a pretty good amount of games with them and you go through 3 divisions. But they're kind of background characters, just there as cannon fodder for the massive hits, so you can protect your main player. So in conclusion, I think this game is a lot of fun, personally. With my nostalgia glasses on, which I do have for this game, I would say it's an A game, personally. I think it's in the A tier for video games. However, I need to kind of look at this game from an objective standpoint, not with nostalgia glasses. With that in mind, I would probably say this game is a high B tier game. I wouldn't necessarily give it an A tier game. there has been quite a few games that I have played that I have a lot of nostalgia for in the past that I've revisited, and then my taste has soured on quite a bit in my adult years. This is not one of those experiences for me, so I still think it fits really good on the high B tier. I would say though, if you do have someone that lives with you that likes to play weird video games from time to time, couch co-op would definitely jump this game up to an A without question. But if you just go and get it as a single player focused guy, you're gonna get like a B experience out of it. I would say the campaign takes anywhere from 8 to 10 hours, depending on how many times you're gonna reset trying to get challenges done. So it's not gonna overstay its welcome by any means. But you know, just it being as easy as it is, I would have liked a little bit more challenge, I think, from this one, just to make some of those matches a little bit more memorable for your playthrough. But I think that's a good spot for it. High B, low A. We'll see where it ends at the end of the year, but I'm pretty happy with it being at a high B tier game for the time being. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for Blitz the League 2. Thank you so much for watching and supporting this series. I have a ton of fun making these, as I say, every time I make them. Not a lot that goes into them, and I know they're not absolutely mind-blowing videos, but they are a lot of fun for me and a good way for me to kind of express my creativity, as shitty as it is. And you know what, dude? I think it's fun, and that's all that matters. So anyways, if you did like it, consider leaving a like and commenting below what you think of Blitz the League 2 or what you thought of the review, or even a recommendation for the next game we're going to tackle on after the credits. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I love you all. Take care of yourselves, and we'll talk to you real soon.